Snow fell like broken feathers from a gray, sorrowful sky as Mary Whitlock pulled her wagon through the white wilderness, clutching the reins with frozen hands. Her 3 boys huddled beneath a worn blanket, their breath fogging the cold air, eyes wide with hunger and fear. The horses were tired, their hooves sinking deep into the snow, each step heavier than the last. Mary had lost everything, her husband, her land, and her place in a world that showed no mercy to widows. After her husband Tom died in a mining accident, the town she had once called home turned its back on her. The bank took her ranch, her neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and every man she asked for work turned away, muttering that a woman with 3 mouths to feed was trouble no one wanted. Her oldest son Luke, only 12, tried to stay strong. He sat upright beside her, holding his little brothers close. "Mama," he whispered, "we can turn back." But Mary's eyes stayed fixed ahead. There was no going back. She'd heard of a settlement beyond the ridges, a place where new lives began, where land was open and hearts kinder. Whether it was true or not, she didn't care. It was all she had left, hope. Night crept in and the wind began to howl. Snow gathered in her hair, and her breath came out in trembling clouds. The wagon wheel hit a rock, snapping the spoke. The horses panicked, rearing and screaming, and in that chaos, the wagon tilted dangerously. Mary cried out, grabbing her boys, pulling them close as the wagon finally settled half in the ditch. Tears burned her frozen cheeks. For a long moment there was only silence, and then the distant glow of a cabin light flickered through the trees. "Stay here," she told her sons, her voice hoarse and cracked. She wrapped herself in her late husband's coat, stepped into the snow, and trudged toward the light. Her boots sank deep, and with every step she whispered a prayer. As she neared the cabin, she saw smoke rising from the chimney and a cross buried in the snow, a grave freshly marked. She hesitated, wondering if she was trespassing on a sorrow deeper than her own. But before she could turn away, the door opened. A tall man stood in the doorway, framed by the golden glow of firelight. He wore a weathered coat, snow dusting his hat and shoulders, his face shadowed but calm. "You lost?" he asked. His voice was steady, the kind that carried warmth even in the cold. Mary tried to speak, but her lips quivered. "Please, my boys, we've nowhere left to go." He studied her for a moment, eyes lingering on her frostbitten hands, her trembling body, then glanced toward the wagon in the distance. "You shouldn't be out here," he said quietly. "Not tonight." Without another word, he grabbed his coat, stepped out, and walked with her toward the wagon. The boys stared at him with a mix of fear and curiosity. The man lifted the youngest into his arms with surprising gentleness. "Let's get you inside before you all freeze," he said. Inside the cabin, warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. The man placed a pot on the fire, poured hot broth into tin cups, and handed them out. "Eat slow," he said. "You'll get sick if you don't." When Mary finally spoke again, her voice was low. "You're kind, sir. I can't pay you, but I'll work. I'll do anything." He didn't answer right away. He just stared into the fire, the light flickering in his eyes. "Name's Cole McGraw," he said at last. "This cabin belonged to my wife. She passed last winter." Mary bowed her head, realizing the cross outside wasn't just a marker. It was love buried beneath the snow. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Cole nodded once. "The world don't give much mercy," he said, "but sometimes it gives a second chance." As the storm howled outside, the fire burned bright, and for the first time in months, Mary's boys fell asleep with full stomachs and warmth in their bones. She watched them, tears silently falling, unsure what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain. For the first time since losing everything, she felt safe. Morning broke soft and pale over the mountains. Snow still blanketed the ground, but inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire and the smell of bread filled the air. Mary rose early, cleaning the hearth, mending a torn curtain, feeling strange to have purpose again. Cole stepped outside to tend to the horses, and she watched him through the frosted window. He moved with quiet strength, the kind of man who carried his pain without complaint. Days turned into weeks. The storm passed, but Mary and her boys didn't leave. Cole never asked them to go, though he also never said they could stay. He simply kept building, chopping wood, fixing fences, and at night they shared quiet suppers by the fire. Sometimes Luke helped him with the tools, learning how to hold a hammer the right way. Cole taught him to tie ropes, mend saddles, and treat a horse's wound. Mary watched them, realizing that this lonely cabin had become something more. A home built not by ownership, but by grace. Still, she carried fear in her heart. The town wasn't far, and she knew how people talked. When she went to the general store for supplies, whispers followed her. "That widow again," someone muttered. "Moved right in with the cowboy." Shame burned in her chest. But when she returned to the cabin and saw Cole teaching her youngest how to light the stove, the weight lifted. He wasn't just helping her, he was helping them live again. One night after the boys had gone to bed, Mary sat by the fire, hands folded in her lap. "You've done too much for us," she said softly. "We can't keep taking from you." Cole looked at her for a long time. "You think I'm doing this out of pity?" he asked. She couldn't answer. He leaned forward, his voice low. "When my wife died, I buried myself in silence. This cabin was just wood and stone. But since you came, it feels alive again." He paused, eyes glimmering in the firelight. "You didn't take from me, Mary, you brought something back." Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words wouldn't come. Instead, she nodded, and for the first time she smiled. Months passed. The snow melted, green returned to the valley, and the sound of laughter filled the cabin daily. The boys called Cole Sir at first, then Mr. Cole, and soon just Pa. He never corrected them. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the hills gold, Cole took Mary's hand. "You and the boys," he said quietly. "You don't owe me anything. But if you'll have me, you're home now." Mary looked at him, her heart breaking and healing all at once. "We already are," she whispered. The cabin that once stood as a tomb of loneliness became a place of new beginnings. The fire that once warmed one man's grief now kept alive the laughter of a family reborn. As the camera pans out, the snow begins to fall again, softly this time, covering the cross outside, not as a symbol of loss but of love that endured through every storm.